Hey there, Red Spotters. It's your host, your Alexis Soto, with a introduction to this segment that was spliced from a very, very long episode. I have decided to re-upload the top 10 movies of 2019 episode, which featured myself, Peter Martinez, and Kyle Lira, into smaller sized, bite-sized, if you will, chunks on YouTube to make it a little less daunting for some to experience this. I understand that we have a tendency to go on very long, so I just thought, what the hell? Let's see what this feels like when we extrapolate one person's entire hour, which is, how long we go on when we do these very, very massive list shows. So I hope you enjoy. And here is the episode.
And so I will move on now into my top 10. And of course, I have notes in the list and everything, as I usually do. All right, so I have 2 rounds of honorable mentions before I get into the actual top 10. I'm not going to dwell on them at all. I'll just list them out. These are movies that I generally liked to enjoyed. So what do I have here? So Midsommar, Ready or Not, Crawl, Far From Home, How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, Good Boys, Us, Shazam, El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie, Pain and Glory, Rocket Man. I happen to like Frozen 2, so there's that. Late Night, and Long Shot. So those are some the first round of honorable mentions. I have more as we go along, but they will be unveiled later on just to keep people off scent. Even though we know how it's going to end, but who cares?
All right, so you're releasing the vote a small percentage at the time.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Just to create a certain narrative that benefits me.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful how people can, the ingenuity of the human mind? So the official number 10 is an interesting one because it kept coming in and out. And I was very...
That's what she said.
I was unsure about it not being in it, and I kept putting it back on the list, and so I rewatched it. By the way, a lot of these movies in my top 10 I had to rewatch like literally 3 or 4 times just to make sure I was sure of that. And thank goodness I had the opportunity to actually do that for once. And the first film is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino.
And away
Tarantino
we go.
is, yes, exactly. Tarantino is one of our amazing filmmakers, and rarely does he make something that doesn't quite pop, especially for me, except for the last movie he made before this, The Hateful Eight, which I liked, but for reasons that I will not get into, did not exactly work as well for me as Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained. So maybe because there was parts of it that were too similar. So I was curious about this movie because in large part, especially going into it, it was uncharacteristic of a Tarantino film, mostly because of its reserved nature, as Peter would say, going into that grindhouse shit, as Tarantino just loves to do. And it was interesting. And I will say, I've had different experiences with this movie the more that I've seen it, because I know that when I walked out of the movie with Peter, we were kind of we were positive on the movie, but we were kind of questioning the whole role of Margot Robbie and what it all was about and everything. But the more, and I think Peter would agree, as in subsequent viewings of that movie, I think it kind of crystallizes why she was there and why she's important and why the ending is even more powerful because of that, of her presence. To me, this is not clearly, because we're talking about Tarantino here, it is not his best. And I mean, my favorite film from Tarantino is still Pulp Fiction, because it's Pulp Fiction. But this really holds a special place, I think, as far as rewatchability, because this movie is so obviously close to Quentin's heart. in so many ways. And I
Yeah.
think you'll notice in a lot of the movies that we've talked about in this year, there have been quite a number of passion projects, quite a number of movies that I think really speak to who the directors are. And I felt like maybe more so than any of the other movies, I got to know Quentin a little more through the lens of this movie. It doesn't hurt that it features, I think, my favorite performances from both Leo and Brad. Really, they're a great part about having to see this again and again, and the atmospheric nature, the recreation of Hollywood Boulevard, just... It's a fucking movie. I mean, it's a what does Al Pacino say? A hell of a picture. Early on in the movie,
The shooting,
Exactly.
the violence. I love that stuff.
just the soundtrack. It is Hollywood 1969, and I think this may be the best recreation of that I've seen. It is
Also-
so spot on.
Also, I don't know if you know this, Peter, but some of these sets are actually miniatures.
Yes, I found that out. I know for sure. Like the drive-in
is
was a miniature.
What's interesting about this movie is this is textbook made for the Academy. And it's really shocking that this movie didn't win Best Picture, considering this is the shit they love and how good it is.
Yeah, I thought it was this or a surprise from Joker. I did not see the Parasite win at all, but yeah, especially this, because it is tailor-made for the Academy. It's
Just like La La Land or Argo were,
Yeah.
although La La Land didn't win in that case.
maybe they just don't feel like being so obvious anymore, but then like why vote for Green Book? It's so weird. No, I learned two things with this film. It's one, Quentin Tarantino, when he made this film, more than anything, he just wanted to step back in time and live in what is considered by him and a lot of people the heyday of Hollywood. That's what he really, more than anything, that's what he wanted to do. It's the way it's shot, the way he slowly just sort of goes for a midnight drive around the town, and you slowly just sort of see the lives of, these bigger than life icons as they a day in their life and their struggles in Hollywood. It's really great. It's really fun. It's really interesting. And again, of course, if you really have any sort of love for this time period or Hollywood in general, it's just double the fun. And the second thing I learned is, God damn, does he love feet? It's always been in his earlier films, but like it was so much in this film to the point where like people in the theater were like
Uncomfortable.
they noticed it. Like that's how it got to the point where they're just kind of laughing at like why are they talking and why is the feet in the literal center of the screen, like, and dirty feet too. Like, okay, I don't know, I'm not gonna get into the feet thing, but yeah.
Like the dirtier.
Well, I
the
don't know if you
better.
noticed, Brad Pitt actually mentioned that in one of his acceptance speeches for
Yeah.
Best Supporting Actor.
That was a good one. That was funny.
I don't know if you know this or saw this, but there's a picture of of Quentin, and he's getting his close up of a foot shot.
Oh yeah, it's oh god.
It's brilliant. I love it. If that sums up a career, shit. But yeah, I absolutely see what you guys mean about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And honestly, it's Martin Scorsese has this thing where he says that, if you have a hankering, or if you're dying to tell a story, then you're making a film. And this is right here an example of that, through and through, because of that. And I know that he really likes this shit, and you could definitely see that going forward. So yeah. Alexis, what's your number 9?
So, my number 9 is I teased, I think in the last podcast, I was gonna make a fairly controversial remark with this movie. And the controversy isn't with its placement. I think, well, not in this list, but in other lists, I'm sure. Scorsese, The Irishman. So it didn't hurt, again, that this came off my exploration into a lot of great works for the first time of Scorsese. We were doing the Scorsese files, as we called them in Red Spotlight back before Irishman came out. And we had, Peter and I had great fun, talking about his many great movies in anticipation. And it created an anticipation for this film. And it didn't disappoint, which is gobsmacking, because the track record of this guy is unparalleled. Especially in terms of not just a work of art, but as something that was so meaningful and special that came from him. It is insanely long, but it is all the better for it. I will defend the length of this film till my dying day.
Oh, it took me 2 days to finish this movie.
I've seen this movie 3 times, okay?
Holy shit.
Wow.
Sit down. That's a long time. And that's kind of one of the things that kept bringing me back to the movie, is I discovered, watching it again, how much fun it actually was to revisit. And it reminds you that even in a film that is in many ways reserved, it is still entertaining enough to watch again and again and again. But it isn't just that. In fact, I think the entertainment for me is the last thing about this movie that I think makes it as great as it is. And when I said about the controversial statement, this is easily, and I easily might offend some people, because we're talking about some of the best films ever made. But when we're talking about the pantheon of Scorsese crime dramas, this is easily my favorite one.
Okay, yeah, this is controversial.
Wow.
Easily my favorite one.
Over Goodfellas?
All of them.
Oh, shit.
Every single
shit.
one of them. Yeah,
Bold
I
move,
told you.
Alexis. Bold move.
And I want to take this time before I am skewered to say that I loved Casino. I owned the film, and I loved Goodfellas. And to many, I would still
tense.
consider.
Emphasis
I would
on
still
the past
consider
tense of
Goodfellas
loved.
to be. I would still consider Goodfellas to be his second best movie he's ever made, and technically
Second best.
to Taxi Driver.
Wow.
Okay, wait. Then wouldn't you consider The Irishman his second best film?
Okay. On a technical level, Goodfellas is a better movie.
Okay.
I am
okay.
speaking for me
Personal.
and what
Okay.
I look for
Okay.
in movies.
All right, that
Irishman works.
That
yes.
makes the statement a little bit better.
That's what I'm saying here. I'm not trashing Goodfellas. I love the film. I'm just saying that for me, there's something in this movie that's explored that appeals to my sensibilities of what I look for in movies. And not that the other films lack this, but I think it connected with me on a more profound level.
Because you're an old fuck.
Yeah, basically.
Alexis does have a thing for old men, so let's see where this goes.
The journey that is explored in the film, and having to see these great actors, which I would even argue disappear into their characters completely, is how great they are, age, the cruel time, or the cruel mistress of time, shall we say, I think is shown in a way here that I felt was more kind of traumatizing in a way, because after watching this movie, I just began to look at people around me and kind of was fixating on, oh God, this guy looks a lot older. I know that there was this one instance where Kyle and I were watching Imagineering story, and it featured Tony Baxter, a Disney Imagineer, from back in the 80s and then a clip to him of where he is now, and just seeing the side by side effect of him having aged so many years, it reminded me of the impact that Irishman had on me, and there's just something I feel more interesting on a human psychological level, as Scorsese says, that Marvel films don't have, that happens with the characters of these in Irishman that I necessarily did not feel all the way pulled into with the other crime dramas. Even though, yes, we do have pieces of shit in this movie as well, I like these pieces of shit better than I like the other pieces of shit in Casino or Goodfellas. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there was something about the journey with Joe Pesci and De Niro, and especially Pacino here, that made this film feel more grand. And I found it especially disappointing.
Alexis, so what you're telling me is it's what it is.
It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece, and it comes at the right time. Like, Scorsese could only have made this movie right now when he is in his mid to late 70s, when you have these golden age crime celebrities in their 70s going into their 80s. And there's something especially powerful because this is... this could be his finale to crime dramas. And it would be a perfect ending, as the ending was for this movie. You know, I really, really loved this film, and I'm surprised how little it's come since its initial release. And a lot of people have really just so casually dismissed it by saying, well, yeah, it's good, but like if it wasn't made by Scorsese, would we really be like talking about it? And is it really Casino? And I'm like, did you watch the movie? I mean, did you not watch those amazing moments, the beautiful costumes, the cinematography, the acting, the emotional, heartbreaking face of De Niro when he's looking out and seeing his daughter dance with Pacino, knowing he has to kill him, and then when he does kill him, or Pesci as this quiet, reserved monster, lovable monster. So many things you could say, but do you see what I'm saying about this and why this maybe was more bigger for me than the other ones? If you care to comment on that.
I will say, I feel
wrong.
like when you adore a film and you feel like it's not getting its deserved accolades,
right?
You tend to dig down into the film and
right.
love it even more. Yeah, so I mean,
good films can do that. Surprisingly,
respect the opinion. Disagree that it's his best.
I didn't expect anyone to agree with that. I just want to make sure people understand where I'm coming from. It's like if I had to pick between that and the others.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And plus, you're an old fart, so.
Yes, I'm 88 years old today.
Unlike Moreno, shit, who knows how old she is?
Oh my gosh, she is falling apart by the seams. Have you seen her lately?
Oh God, yeah.
She's that bathtub lady from The Shining.
Moreno?
Or she needs to remove her ruby necklace.
This blatant misogyny from these two other Bernie bros, I don't endorse it. I don't. I wash my hands clean. It's ageism and misogyny.
The night is dark and full of terrors. That's all we're gonna say.
Anyway, this is the part of the show where Peter gets upset at me because I praise the movie so much, and it technically should be higher, but it's not. And it's not for the very reason that I just happen to love other movies more, even though I would very much say that this is another Roma situation here. Well, actually not Roma. I think it was the other one. Parasite.
At number 8.
Yes, at number 8, because you know what? Number 8 is a pretty good place to be, considering that all of the movies that I have in my top 10, I love so much. And again, before you levy such horrific attacks against me, I want to reiterate that the differences between 1 through 10 are minuscule at best.
There are still differences.
There are. For instance, I have the film in my top 10. Kyle didn't. So we'll just leave that where it is. So this movie, we've praised this so many times, I feel already, but it's an amalgamation of who the person who made it, Bong Joon-ho. It is a Korean film, but it's also uniquely universal, where it is touching upon a class issue, not just class issue, but a number of issues that are affecting just about every kind of people and every kind of place on this planet.
That's a theme with his movies.
Yeah, it is. And no one has ever criticized it for being brought in needlessly. It's not as if he shoehorns these things in. He finds very effective ways of inserting those things that feel very much organic to what is happening, not just with the narrative, but with the characters. It's interesting because the best ensemble of the year as far as cast is concerned is definitely Knives Out. But then I look at the cast for Parasite, and when I think about that, these are actors who I can't understand what they're saying. I literally have to read the subtitles to know what they're saying. But just the performances that are captured through the camera, I think this gives Knives Out a big run for its money in terms of its ensemble. And you definitely saw why it was that it won in so many areas. It is the film of the year because of what it touches. It also, again, similarly to Scorsese, Bong Joon-ho finds ways to not only make this feel important, but also thrilling and captivating. Because, and this seems to be a pattern, but like we get halfway through his movie and something unfolds and you're literally having your jaw hit the floor and you're aghast at like, wait, what movie am I watching again? Because something just changed here that changed my entire understanding for what it was that I was seeing. And he has a great talent for doing that, and for making it look and feel visceral and raw, and not necessarily holding anything back. It is also, again, very much rewatchable, and very, very happy that the movie is finding an audience in the States and all over the world now. It was just announced today that it's going to go on Hulu in a number of weeks with this movie. So, and look, I mean, this is a director who previously I knew from Snowpiercer. Also a great film. And this really solidified it. And this is going to be one movie that we'll never forget in that regard. Kyle, did you have any thoughts on this movie?
I think that this movie is a lot of things. I think that the way that it had to deal with all these like families, the way that it was shrouded, the character Moon, the Moon character, I think that really excelled it in terms of like the acting, and I think he should have been in the front runner of the acting categories in the Oscars. But I think that this movie was really good. I'd
just like to remind everyone that he put this film at number 8.
I'll remind them as well, because what comes next is number 7. That was better. So Now this is okay. This one's hard. This one is hard because it shows the sheer power that movies can have in a medium in which people would not suspect from. I have a sense that Peter has a good idea of what I'm referring to.
Yep.
And Kyle...
Toy Story 4.
Yep. And Kyle may recoil at it because not that it's a bad, for his reasons he avoided this movie like the plague. But this is a movie, and I want to stress this here because I know people are gonna give me some really weird reactions here. This isn't a movie that is fun to watch. This is a movie that is horrific. It is disturbing, and it is, yes, it's Toy Story 4, and it is traumatizing children. Yes, I'm referring to the documentary film Leaving Neverland. And it's on this list because this is what films do when they work their magic. They are powerhouses that smack you in the face, and they make you reevaluate the society, go figure, the culture in which you are in. And people are going to immediately start say, okay, first of all, putting Michael Jackson to the side, because it's not about that, looking at the documentary film. This is why I love documentary filmmaking, because of what it can invoke in you. Things, to me, are far more horrific if they come from a place of truth. And no other example can I name them from this. It also is a little bit personal for me because I know there were a lot of cues that I took from this movie in particular, as well as other documentary films that I used to make my own short form documentary, which I don't know if I told people, but it's actually been submitted to the Nova Film Festival in the Capital Market. I've not told anybody that, but it's actually been it's been submitted. Judy Go Wong, who was so gracious enough to do the interview for that movie, asked for it, and it's there. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of...
force be with you.
Gonna be schmoozing with the Hollywood elites?
Not Hollywood. This is in fucking Virginia. Anyway, because it was made in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
A lot of the cues that I used, the inspiration to do that and to tell a story that was so powerful came from seeing this movie. Again, this isn't a movie I love to watch. Naturally, I know that in the discussions that I had with Peter about this, he and I, or at least I did, had nightmares about this. Literal nightmares. I can't remember the last time I saw a movie that make me have nightmares. And seeing things in the dark that were just, unbelievably horrific. So, and again, I want to make people to understand this. It's not me putting this movie here is not in any way to chastise the individual who is very much on trial in this. It's about the power and the form of a documentary film that I feel strongly and passionate about, that many people just don't consider to be real movies. And as Peter can attest to, this is probably one of the best examples of, you can call it emotionally manipulative, but damn does it work.
Yeah, it does work on the emotions it's setting out to stir in you.
Yeah.
Very
I want to hear in great detail Kyle's thoughts.
This is not an attack on Kyle, nor should Kyle consider this an attack on him. I want to make that clear.
Yeah, but I kind of want to turn it into one. So, Kyle, what did you think of this pick?
Is it a curveball? Were you guys expecting this one?
I feel like you've talked about it quite a bit.
Right.
So it wasn't out of left field.
I avoided this movie because I already know all the stuff that Michael Jackson did, and I don't think I'll have the stomach for it. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Which is perfectly understandable because, to be sure, I didn't have the stomach for it. I'll tell you that. I just want to make sure. I wrote this down because this is exactly what I was feeling when I was thinking about this movie. This makes me feel like shit to realize how monstrous people can be, and how humanity can turn a blind eye to anything. I'm glad that it does, though. Films are so much more than entertainment and craft, and this is the best example of it. And again, not to say that documentaries are all true. Of course, this is a version, somebody's side of the story, but to the effect that it's working its magic, I feel that it does so, and then some.
Yeah, films are empathy machines.
Yep. So.
All right, number 4.
Scarlett Johansson, right, was in 3 movies this year?
All on your list, yes.
Actually, no. Number 6. It's surprising because I'm not going to do a Kyle. Number 6 is Jojo Rabbit. Taika Waititi. ScarJo.
Was it both your guys' number 6?
Roman Griffin Davis. No.
Mine was my number 3.
Yeah, he had it higher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So, Roman Griffin Davis, a pure revelation, captures the whimsical innocence of a child better than I can remember any other actor doing.
Whoa, okay, Siskel.
For a coming of age / political satire film that this is. It is a weird one. It's a weird one, and I'm...
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
He delivers the best line in the movie.
Which line?
Fuck you, Hitler.
Oh, well, yeah. And still people thought it was like controversial.
Nobody watches these movies.
It's one of the most unique movies I've experienced in a long time because, okay, on paper, what? A coming-of-age movie that's hidden inside a political satire on the Nazis? What? And as Peter said many times in the reviews, in order for this to have worked, you really had to walk a fine line, a really fine line. And I don't know how Taika did it, but man, I think he delivered something that was legitimately moving. And while I greatly enjoyed Thor Ragnarok and What We Do in the Shadows, particularly for their comedic pieces, one of the things, and I think this came up when Peter and I were discussing, or at least Kyle and all of us were discussing, the possibility of Taika being recruited for Guardians 3 in that whole rehire James Gunn bullshit thing that happened in that 6-month span. One of the reasons why we all, among other reasons, why we were not necessarily in favor of Taika doing it was because the Guardians movies are an emotional powerhouse at their core. And I hadn't seen anything in Taika's repertoire or discography, as we say, filmography, that would indicate that he has prioritized that kind of emotion or heart in any way. Let me be clear. I've only seen What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Ragnarok, so I can't speak to what came before that could have shown signs of that. And when I saw it, it was surprising to see that it was, yes, it was funny, but it was more than that. It was beautiful.
It has like a heart gut punch to the movie that I was not expecting. Like, talk about left field. Like that, the emotional core of the movie really gut punched you. Some scenes are rather suspenseful as hell too. And I was not expecting it. I was expecting, funny romp with the message, fuck Nazis. I mean, that's a good message.
Yeah.
As well. But it is surprisingly heartwarming to a degree that I was not expecting. And I think that right there is like the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that it is its heart.
And it's perfectly encapsulated with Roman Griffin Davis in this movie as JoJo, and, seeing what he goes through, and I guess you could say the hero's journey that he goes through. But as other directors, like I've said, with Bong Joon-ho, Quentin Tarantino, and Martin Scorsese, Taika in this movie really kind of showed his heart much more overtly than I had ever seen him do before in any one of his films. And it immediately appealed to me when I realized that it was a coming-of-age film, which I love those movies. Go figure. I found it very, very reassuring to me that even in a very generic, very vanilla, as far as taste is concerned, our area, that they were having as good of a time watching that movie as we were. And it gave me such hope that, odd little creations like this can actually appeal to a wider audience
and shine through
when given the chance.
The little engine that could.
And it ended in the best way possible. A lot of these movies, going from this point forward, and I guess this is why Parasite isn't in this part, because Parasite's not necessarily in the best happy ending. You know how happy endings are for me, guys, so it's not really a surprise. But it is an inspirational ending. Just the weird zaniness of having JoJo and Elsa dance to the German version of David Bowie's Hero. And then that beautiful inspirational quote where it ends off, it's like, let things happen to you. And it's like, I mean, that genuine surprise. And I didn't expect this movie to end up being so high, at least in my top 10. And needless to say, it overperformed. So that's numbers 10 through 6. Before I move on to the top 5, I have my second wave of honorable mentions, which are also going to upset some people because I couldn't find space to put these movies into. Klaus.
Can I hear that again, Alexis?
Klaus.
Oh, music to my ears. Go on, explain. I know it's an honorable mentions, but the fact that he even mentioned it is all the justification I need. Go ahead.
Well, the
Mr.
justification
Alexis
you were looking for, my friend, would have been granted to you had you listened to the previous shows where I reviewed the film with my good friend David Francisco, and where I eloquently expressed my true feelings for the movie. It is one of the best Christmas movies I've ever seen, and one of the best in a long time. Heart is key. Characters are key. And the use of 2D animation reminds us why this is a style of animation that should not be let go the way of the dodo. Beautiful animation that I felt should have won the Academy Award just based on the animation alone. That being said, there's an animated movie in my top 10 and it ain't that, so there's that.
No.
Dolomite is, and it's Frozen too. Dolomite is my name.
No.
What?
It's Toy Story 4, isn't it?
It's Frozen too. Dolomite is my name.
It looks like we're going into the unknown.
Dolomite is My Name is a great film.
It is. It has a great cast as well. But I think for a lot of us, really, it was just, it was a breath of fresh air getting to see Eddie Murphy in a movie again. It had been so long, and he was really, really, really good. Like, a lot of people thought that this should have been in consideration for Best Actor. At least
I think it should have been
some talk of it. And I loved Eddie Murphy's portrayal of Dolomite here. Just the earnestness, the endearment of him wanting to put himself out there after, having his dreams washed up and then making them happen. And of course, making it funny, which was hysterical, obviously. Although not my favorite comedy of the year, as we'll go. Next. Ooh, I think this one just got swapped a little further. Little Women. Greta Gerwig.
Mm-hmm.
Greta is, mark my words, going to be one of the greats, period, as far as movie making. Lady Bird was beautiful, as was this. There was a level of charm and heart and beauty and empowerment that was woven in throughout all of the characters in this film. Did we lose Kyle?
Yeah, but I assume he would just call back.
Well, okay. Woven all throughout the characters in this movie. Of course, it has a wonderful performance by Saoirse Ronan and by Florence Pugh and many others. So I feel bad because I feel like if I had walked out and just walked out having the movie in my mind, it would have easily cracked top 10. And I didn't get the chance to revisit it. And unfortunately, when I walked out of the movie, the fucking Iran thing happened and it ruined my mood entirely. It honestly ruined my entire experience because of what real world got in the way of it. Like I walked out of this movie. It was an incredibly cathartic experience. You walk out and it's like a middle finger is literally being shoved in your eye. Is how it felt.
So you're saying you're no better than the Oscars for shunning this film?
Well, I didn't shun it. I reevaluated all the films, and I wanted to make sure, okay, as a movie, do I want this in the top 10? And it just so happened that there were other films that I wanted in the top 10 more than this one. But I will say, this, I think, is an instant classic. An instant classic that for generations to come, they're going to be looking back on this movie. A lot of little girls are going to grow up on this movie. And I think the world is going to be a lot better for it. I loved it, and I love Greta, and I think beautiful. This one surprised me. And it surprised me how even better it got when I saw it again. Booksmart, Olivia Wilde, all the things Kyle said and more. One of the most surprising comedies, I think the best comedy of the year. I love that Olivia Wilde went out of her way to make this movie look actually interesting instead of just like this boring way that most comedies film their movies. This will be an instant classic as well as Little Women was. My next honorable mention, Lulu Wang's The Farewell. Beautiful movie. Awkwafina and Zhao Zhuzhen, powerhouse. Also, oh my god! Emotional
What's
movie.
wrong?
I don't want to reuse the same words, but I have to move on. So loved it. Moving on to my last.
Well, these are the honorables. You don't got to get into it.
Marriage Story is my last honorable mention.
Okay.
Good. And this was a surprise because it was going to be in the top 10 and then it wasn't. But ScarJo and Adam Driver are incredible actors. And wow, Being Alive.
Also another Randy Newman movie.
Well, hopping from one Randy Newman film to the other.
Oh no!
You really walked into that one.
Good, I segued. I helped you with that segue.
Yeah, there's gonna be just like 2 movies in this top 5 that have numbers next to them but they don't correspond with the right numbers. So it's so strange.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, God damn it. Forgive me if this one feels a bit long. So my number 5 is Toy Story 4.
I knew it.
Cause
Vindication.
Vindication, yes.
Oh no.
Why? Oh no.
I can't let you.
I mean, the whole podcast has been building to this moment, according to you.
This is the crescendo. Yes.
Yep, this is where we are.
This is where the conversation begins and ends.
Yeah.
With Toy Story.
I want to, throw some preemptive missiles at both of your directions.
But you can't let it throw.
Before before the attacks come in my direction, because
Fuck you for liking a film.
yeah, exactly. Peter Martinez did a very effective job of making me so depressed about this film existing in the lead up to it. And not to give him all the credit, but the Pixar sequels have been very underwhelming. And in fact, it was the Incredibles 2 movie that really just, the bottom fell out, and I just got angry that these movies were being made and that no effort, it seemed anyway, was being put into them. And it made me angry that Toy Story 4 was happening, because this was a roller coaster of a journey. When Toy Story 4 was announced way back when in 2015, I was excited because, like, well, okay, I love Toy Story. And then came the hate train of literally the entire fucking world. Like, but Toy Story 3 was the best ending, and it is still the ending of the franchise in many people's eyes. And so it was this weird roller coaster where I was excited, then I was filled with such anxiety, and then I saw the movie and I enjoyed it and I liked it, but I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
We did the podcast review, I think, with Peter, and then also on Fantasy Fair.
Even the High Priestess, Miss Moreno,
oh no, she hates it.
Oh, okay. So she's liked it even less.
Well,
okay,
actually, she liked it, but because she's a Buzz stan, it wasn't really her thing, you know. That's just kind of. Look, I'm being real. I mean, that's
a Buzz stan. You Disney fanatic.
She literally said that the Buzz was the reason she saw these movies, all of them. So of course, this was not going to be that great for her. Not to dismiss her, but you know, she is old. We did the reviews on our shows, and I seemed to like it the most, even though I wasn't necessarily in love with it. Although the rest of you also were complimentary toward the movie.
It's a good movie.
And then
I'll admit that.
That's what I'm saying. You guys were saying good things about it. I'm not saying that you guys trashed it. All I'm saying is, in those discussions, I seemed the most positive, although I didn't love the movie at that point. And then I saw it.
The red herring was obviously you having a poster of it in your room.
But the poster came after I had an epiphany. What is this? Oh, God.
Epiphany?
Yeah.
You had an epiphany with Toy Story 4.
Sorry, I'm distracting.
No, I have to apologize to the audience. It is so hard having to do these shows when there is a fucking election season going on. I'm sorry. I am so distracted right now. The poster came after I had a realization about why the movie was actually kind of speaking to me and me alone. Being real here. The film actually had a much more emotional resonance with me than I initially gave it credit for. And it's for a very particular reason. Woody has been a character that has been with me my entire life. And I know Peter, Kyle would also say this about Woody, was kind of our pal. Growing up as toddlers and infants, growing up on those movies. And so psychologically, yeah, psychologically, you feel like when you see Woody, you're looking at a long friend, an old friend, your oldest friend maybe. And the reason why the movie,
I mean, you got a friend in me,
well,
right?
yeah. But the reason why the movie kind of broke through in a way that no other movie kind of did.
I want to add to what you
Go
said
ahead.
about Woody. Growing up, my favorite toy was my pull string Woody. I absolutely adored it, and I get what you mean. I get what you mean. It kind of extends a little bit beyond your common nostalgia, and I get it.
Well, it's like I kept thinking about this movie, and I didn't understand what it was because I didn't necessarily love it all that much. But then I realized that when I saw it again with my family when I came back from Washington, D.C., and when I said previously, I don't talk about this, and I don't know if any of you two picked up on this earlier when I came back last year. But I was not in a good place emotionally. I was very lost and empty and not knowing what to do or what I just did for all these years was all for. And it really moved me, and especially thinking about this film as we were getting closer and closer to this top 10 list. Woody goes through an existential crisis in this film of being entirely devoid of meaning, having put in so much of his life and energy into something and then having it just go away, and finding yourself in a place of not belonging anywhere and feeling lost with who you are. And as I mentioned years and years ago, that's why Winter Soldier was such a great movie for me, and why, because in that time I was having an identity crisis of sorts. There was a lot of things that I was just losing faith in. And the turmoil that Steve Rogers was going through at that time mirrored almost kind of perfectly the things that I was going through in my life. In a similar way that Woody's story in this movie mirrored what I was experiencing. And it made me cope with the situation that I had been placed in. The situation in which I felt that nobody could see or really understand the deep sadness that I felt inside of me all throughout last year. Funnily enough, it was the saddest year of my life since 2014, which coincidentally, those are my favorite years in films of the last decade. So I don't know what that says about me.
You were deep in your feels.
Yeah.
So you connected more with the film.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
The funny thing to do would be to just knock this film down entirely.
Harp on.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And then just, yeah. But, it's 2020. New decade, new me. So I will say, I think that is an interesting and highly valid reason for including Toy Story 4 in your top 4. Five. Yes.
See what I told you? The numbers don't correspond. It gets weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means Frozen 2 is either
Number
number
3
one
or
or
number
number
1.
3.
I'm going for number 1. Fuck it. Let's go all the way.
Wait, what's number 1?
No, not Frozen 2.
No, that's coming up. No. But just people understand. Just to make sure people understand, Woody has been with me my whole life, and to see him go through what I went through made me feel better about my situation, and made me kind of see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel that I was going through. You know, I don't talk about the things that I go through inside my mind all that often, but it was worth mentioning here because this is what spoke to me.
When you said that, I just thought, what is going inside his head? And then Inside Out.
I will say though, just I wanted to see how it played. I rewatched all of the Toy Story films again for the first time with 4 at the end, just to see how it would play. And it actually was pretty great. Like my feelings of it, as ironically enough, as a standalone adventure, kind of went up when I saw it compared to the other movies. I really do love the film. So,
fuck Bonnie.
Oh well, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
The real villain.
the real. Yeah. Okay, quickly, you got to move on through this. Number 4 is Doctor Sleep.
Wow. Okay.
Are you
What?
really surprised by that?
Well, maybe I haven't spoken with him as much about it as you have, as I have with you.
Okay, because he has been loving this film ever since it came out. Yeah, that's not a surprise at all.
Well, it's like, again, kind of like with Irishman, we built up anticipation toward this because I, for the first time, visited the Overlook Hotel in the Shining film. And we had such a great podcast, which I'm offended that you forgot even took place when Moreno brought it up to your attention.
We do so much shit, and I'm half asleep most of the time. It's, okay, come on.
It was.
I gotta try doing these podcasts half asleep.
Sometimes I get mean when I do it, so.
Sometimes. Okay.
But it's 2020, right?
New year,
new me. No, The Shining was a revelation for me. My favorite horror movie of all time, and my second favorite horror movie would be this one. Doctor Sleep is my favorite kind of horror film because I think it encapsulates a lot of what I loved about The Shining, but it also does what I love about great sequels, is that it expands, but it also stands on its own 2 feet. And has beautiful performances by Ewan McGregor, and especially, oh my god, I'm losing my voice here. Rebecca Ferguson and so many others in this movie. Look, Mike Flanagan is the star of this. Writing this from his adaptation of Stephen King's novel, there's something beautiful in this film, and especially its subtle commentary on death and what is beyond the great beyond, as it were. Especially with the titular character of Dr. Sleep. It is also
it's the heavy side layer.
It is incredibly cathartic. Even I think a character study, really. And I can't decide if I preferred the theatrical or the director's cut. The director's cut was 3 hours long. But that gave much more nuance than was not previously shared in the original theatrical version of it.
I'd say director's cut.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, it's the best X-Men movie.
It really is. No, it really is. I mean, to say nothing of its of the horror elements or the visual effects. I mean, it all works at a level 10 for me. Yes, it was incredibly exciting to see all of these elements. I was invested in all of the characters, the villains, the heroes. It is a movie that I think we've watched, at least 3 or 4 times, and it does not get old. It gets better every single time. I think it enriches for me my love for The Shining, and I love those two as their own films individually. I think it does beautiful stuff with the character of Dan Torrance, and then also with his father. No spoilers there. And it does something weird for a horror film. And I think that's also the trend for what we saw in Toy Story 4 and Jojo Rabbit. It ends on a very inspirational note, a very uplifting note.
It's a really dark film about, your past ghosts, your demons, addiction, overcoming yourself and your past and who you are, and, parental figures. There's a lot of dark shit within the film, but I think with all Flanagan's work, most of it, he does have a pretty good beating heart, and he often puts that in his films. And with this, like, there are so many amazing character moments within the film that I absolutely love. I mean, the biggest point, of course, you know, the discussion he has with his father at the Overlook during the third act. The great thing about it is it doesn't try to be The Shining, at least for the most part. It acts as a sequel. It acts as its own film. It asks as many things, and it succeeds very much at most, if not all of those things. I agree with you. This one hit all the right spots.
Yeah. Isn't it novel for us to agree on something? Okay, number 3, The Two Popes. For all the reasons that that Kyle said, and more, Jonathan Pryce and Anthony Hopkins gave a performance for the ages. My 2 favorite acting performances of this year, maybe of the whole decade. They're the whole movie. And to say nothing of the fact that a movie about 2 people talking with each other can be as captivating as some of the biggest blockbusters, some of the most emotional character studies, is impressive as all hell. This, you know, looked like all the conventions of a standard Oscar bait movie, and it wasn't that. It
could have been easily overly pretentious.
Yeah, it could have, and it wasn't. It was also, you know, it does also speak to my spirituality. Again, not something that I broadcast or talk about all that often, but you know, the idea of philosophy of these, you know, these 2 giants, if you will. And also just how beautifully crafted the film is. Another, Peter and I discussed about whether it might have improved if it had been more balanced and giving us a little bit more of the past with Ratzinger, and not just Francis or Bergoglio. But it picks a point of view, and I think even when it does that, it's fair, and it's deeply moving and emotional, and it gives me hope that the values that are inherent in this religion that is, you know, connected with our cultural backgrounds, it gives me hope that there are people in the future like Francis who can move this ancient religion in a direction that is more representative of where people are today, and is more loving and understanding and compassionate and intelligent about people and the planet and everything. And yes, it's a left-wing diatribe, whatever. That's what I want to do with everything. I get it. But
fucking Bernie, bro.
I bet you'd speak kindly of Castro.
Just like Barack Obama did.
Just like Barack Obama.
So on all of that, I'm sure we can agree on the 2 popes. Number 2, and that was number 3. Shit. Number 2 is Knives Out.
Oh my God, Frozen 2 is
God.
number 1. Oh no.
So, Knives Out, I mean, I already loved Rian Johnson, but Knives Out, and
Even
again,
after he ruined Star Wars?
Oh, fuck off. This is the best original film, like original, that I've seen in years. It is easily my favorite movie of its genre, of this whodunit murder mystery. And it shows you why Rian Johnson is a spectacular filmmaker. And I don't mean to crap on J.J. Abrams, but he's literally the exact opposite of that, where like J.J. just loves to swim in nostalgia and vapid crap. Johnson really loves to examine what the material is and almost makes it kind of a pseudo commentary on it while making it kind of the best version of that genre.
He tries to pick apart what makes it tick,
yes,
and then push it forward,
yes,
at the same time. Yeah,
it's kind of like you make a good analogy. It's like he dissects a grandfather clock and he tries to piece it all together and see what makes it work.
He puts it back together in a way where it may work better than it had before, and it made you it made you remember why it is you loved it in the first place. That's a great analogy. The writing is the best writing in any movie, clearly. How can you not say that it is? Because the tangled weaves you have to write. I mean, how do you write something like this and not kill yourself? Like, watching this movie, for
KFC FBI?
Watching this movie subsequent times, you really do feel stupid. It's like, it's staring you in the face. All of the damn answers are there. And I love movies that tell you what's happening the entire time, but you're too stupid to realize. Or not too stupid, but the filmmaking is too smart that it's distracting your attention in every which way.
I think that's where a lot of people draw their I wouldn't say hatred or loathing or anything, that's too strong of a word, but like the contention that a lot of people have with Rian Johnson is because
people hate him. No, people really, really fucking hate him.
It's because he does make you think. You know, and not many people do that. You know, he makes you think. He doesn't make movies to make you comfortable. You know, he makes movies to tell you a story. You know, and I think that's what's incredible about what he did and everything like that. So yeah. Also, it's amazing how the main character, her character quirk is vomiting.
It's important that the main character was like the only good person, the person with a good heart that won. And I mean, it's amazing how, and again, I guess this speaks to, I mean, one of the best endings in the movie all year. Ana de Armas was great. So was Daniel Craig. No, don't get me wrong, but it was hilarious how the movie ended. And like, to me, when I see that ending, like, I picture Rian Johnson as Ana de Armas in the mansion, and all those fucking Thrombies as like the Last Jedi cult, or the anti-Last Jedi cult. Honestly, like, we have to thank if this movie won Best Picture, I would feel like we have to thank the Phantom Menace, because this movie kind of wouldn't exist if it weren't for that.
Also, it's kind of cool how like the first shot and the last shot is that mug.
Yeah.
There's so many little things you can say with this film.
Too many. So at one point we should be doing a commentary on that. So my favorite movie of the year was Joe and Anthony Russo, Chris Marcus, Steve McFeely, the whole cast. I think you heard these people: Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson. It goes on and on and on. No surprise that my
God damn it, it's a Marriage Story.
Yeah, my favorite film was Avengers Endgame. I'm not gonna like drag it out because this could have been, I don't know, telegraphed 5 years ago and it would have surprised nobody. It is the culmination of all of not just the
Russo cultists.
Yes, but more than that, the culmination of these 10 years of movies. And, you know, again, like as I've said repeatedly, that the MCU holds a special place because I feel in large part I wouldn't have started talking about this kind of stuff if it wasn't for two particular movies that came out a certain year that were Marvel, that were kind of big and everything. But it was the closing chapter of perhaps my favorite character in cinematic history.
Iron Man.
Yeah, sure. Being on this journey, them, you know, Joe and Anthony Russo with Captain America. You know, these last 4 movies that they've done, I am a cultist of the Russos, clearly. But, you know, they've never disappointed me. And I know Peter will have some things to say about that throughout the end of time. But they've never let me down, and they've never let me down with my favorite character. I've said so many things about the inner, you know, complexities of it, but I will say, without question, my favorite theatrical experience, the roller coaster of emotions that I felt. I've never laughed as hard, was as happy, or cried as much. Ugly cry and happy cry. it's a moment that's going to forever live in my mind and my heart. And as is said at the end of the movie, it is really bumming me out that we have to live in a world without Captain America. At the end of that. So,
until next time on Disney Plus.
well, that's not
Get your
him.
subscription now.
So that's the top 10 for me. Real quick, 10 was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 9 was The Irishman, 8 was Parasite, 7 was Leaving Neverland, 6 was Jojo Rabbit, 5 was Toy Story 4, 4 was Dr. Sleep, 3 was The Two Popes, 2 was Knives Out, and 1 was Avengers Endgame. I do so apologize for going over time, but it's what it was. Peter, get into this. Let's go.